People people
Sorry
are
about that.
no, that's all right. People are leveraging their dollars, you know, two, three, four times fold, and getting bang for their buck and healthy food. Um, and you know, I don't have to tell this group all of the comorbidities that come with obesity, housing insecurity, food insecurity, job insecurity, health, other health concerns, that many are interconnected with food insecurity. And we have a goal in this county, many of you are working on it, to try to eliminate childhood hunger in the county. And that's a really, really important, it's important to understand that all these issues are interconnected. In this most recent budget, we approved a good amount of money. It's never enough, but it was a significant amount for the budget. $14 million for the Office of Food Systems Resilience. That's to develop and maintain the work they're doing, a strategy to improve food systems in the county, and to do programming and make grants around the effort to end childhood hunger, which we just talked about, and to make a permanent model for the food staples program, which started during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that includes school-based food assistant grants programs and grants that are offered through a range of, you know, from 40,000 to 300,000. That money is really, really important. We know there's a ton of need out there, but I'm really proud that we have taken the lead in this region, in the state, really in the country, and trying to step up and say, we're going to think about this at a systems level, and we're also going to support the people on the ground who are doing the work. Many of you who are on here, I see Ms. Pat and others and Manna and everybody who's on this call who's been doing the work for a long time. You know, many of the food assistance providers have been advocating for cold food storage, right, as a way to make sure we recover and we don't lose food. And we're making some progress on that. You know, we don't want food to go to waste. And so making sure that there's enough infrastructure to get that food around the county and to people who need it. We've got a lot of good food. I talk about it all the time. One of the best parts about being in Montgomery County is there's a lot of good food coming from a lot of restaurants in a lot of places. And a big part of our strategy, we're blessed to have that. Not every part of the country has that. So a big part of our strategy has to be food recovery, and cold storage is a big part of that. I'm the chair of the education committee, and as I mentioned, and we had a really difficult discussion around the MCPS budget. You know, we're coming off of a time where, thanks to the federal money, and obviously we've got an election in 40 days, where food systems work is on the ballot. If you didn't know it, it absolutely is. And who becomes president and who becomes senator and who becomes all of our state and local offices matters for this work. But we were able to, through the pandemic, provide free breakfast and lunch for all of our kids for a number of years. That money has now gone away. And when you combine that with the child tax credit going away, which cut child poverty in half, we're in a situation now where I think people don't know we have more students on free and reduced lunch, free and reduced meals, which is the marker for poverty. We have more students on that, about 75,000, than DC public schools has students. Nearly half of our students are on free and reduced meals. And that's a significant number of kids that we need to make sure have a healthy food. And I know all you know that. But we've had to move away from that because of the funding. Part of the childhood hunger work is to figure out how do we continue to extend those meals to kids who need them. In my view, ultimately to everyone, to take away the shame of it and to just standardize it. But we're going to need to figure out both a funding and better systems to do that. The other thing I'll talk about there is, and these are parts of the strategic plan to end childhood hunger, which were ended there's 14 strategies, which I know you all know. 5 of them are related to schools. expanding free meals, as I just talked about, the child and adult food care program, community distributions, pantries, expanding Head Start and pre-K. One of the Project 2025 things is to get rid of Head Start. I was a Head Start kid, right? Just another reason this kind of work is on the ballot. Just want to remind everybody. And expanding the weekend bags, which were really helpful and continue to be helpful. Um, I also am very interested in how we make sure we connect more students directly to our food system so they understand it more. I've been working hard with our agricultural community. We're blessed to have a really robust agricultural community here to not only do partnerships around getting more food into our system, into our schools, and there are some of those happening, especially around some of the fruits, but also getting kids to learn about how food is made, where it comes from. It doesn't come from your corner store, even your grocery store. It comes from the ground. And how do we continue to expand that, as well as meeting the many cultural needs of our students who come from 150 plus countries and are used to all types of food here in the county. I want to highlight the work of Montgomery College, which recently was ranked by Wallet Hub, the number 10 community college in the country. I spoke recently at the ribbon cutting for the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math Building on the Tacoma Park campus, which is beautiful and is going to be awesome. And I think can have some connection because it's a STEM campus to like food and other really cool industries. They actually, I think, are the number 1 community college in the country. There are 1,000 community colleges in the country. The fact that we've been ranked number 10 is a big deal, but I actually think it's number 1. And they have a mobile market at their Rockville campus, which is one of the many examples of initiatives where they're connecting their students to safe and nutritious food. They've had food lockers, and they've dedicated staffing to that. It's just a testament to the work that's going on in a lot of different places. On my other committee responsibility, on the Planning and Housing and Parks Committee, there's obviously a connection to zoning, right? And how we have all the land use authority on the council. In places like the Ag Reserve, how do we protect and promote production for local consumption? Now, there aren't a ton of fresh fruits. The majority of our Ag Reserve is not doing fresh fruits and vegetables. We're trying to, how do we have a real conversation about increasing that where possible? Obviously, again, the subsidies that I started with make the profitability of this has made it harder on farmers, and it's kind of incentives to do different types of, sod and things that are more profitable. But how do we continue to grow that and make sure we expand and take advantage of what is happening up there? I think it's easy to just say, oh, well, we'll just get it from somewhere else in the country. No, we should have a robust strategy to grow our own and have a goal to increase that local production for a ton of reasons. How do we keep money in people's pockets, right? So that they can spend more money on healthy food and for themselves and their families. It's one of the reasons I'm so proud of the rent stabilization law we passed last year. For many folks, for almost 40% of our county rents. I was a renter for most of my life. And too many of our county residents are spending 50, 60, 70, 80% of their monthly income on rent. And I don't have to tell you what that means when that is happening. They're looking for the cheapest and least healthy food options when that happens. And so it's why an issue that you might not think is as connected to food system is super connected, because we need to make sure people have more money in their pockets. If you think of food and shelter, like the two things that people say the most, food and shelter, and if both of those are expensive or out of reach to live a healthy life, that's not equitable. It's not fair. It's not in keeping with who we are. And so we have to factor those things in when we're thinking about food security, in addition to investments in public transit, which we've made pretty affordable. It's $1 now. It's free for seniors, free for students, $1 for everyone else. But we need to improve the routes, make it more reliable, make sure it can get more places, build those bus rapid transit systems, all those things that are, again, help people get around. If you don't have fresh fruits and vegetables in your community, if you can get to it really quickly, you're more likely to buy it. And so how do we do that? And I think this just highlights that something I know you all know. Food systems are complex. The supply chain to the consumer, there's a lot in between there. And I'm just excited that we have chosen to tackle this as a system because there's a lot of opportunities to do this better, to address the challenges that our community is facing and come out stronger and healthier. I'm really proud to live and work in a county where we've dedicated money and invested in things like the Food Council to help us do this better. And invested in things like the Crossroads Farmers Market, where I just left, celebrating their $1 millionth in fresh checks, which is, again, something that hasn't happened, to my knowledge, anywhere else across the country. And so we need to do more. I'm your partner in doing that, and just look forward to working with all of you now and into the future. But happy to take some questions or thoughts really about how you think we can do all that, and appreciate again for you all having me.
Sorry, couldn't find my unmute there for a second. Thank you so much, Councilmember Jawando. We really, really appreciate it. It's just awesome to hear, and I really appreciate your comments about how connected these things are to transit, to housing, and all these other parts, zoning, and all these things, that because a food system really is a system, and these are all interconnected parts, and addressing it means addressing it at really every level. So I really, really appreciate your notes there. I am going to open the floor up to questions. Michael, I see you with your hand up, so I'm going to go to you first. Folks are also welcome to drop them into the chat if they would like to, but go for it, Michael.
Thanks, Jack. Everyone can hear me? Okay, because Councilmember Jawando at a council meeting had to deal with a bad microphone on my end, so I'm making sure it's working this time. So my question is about the MC Groceries program. First off, thank you, everyone involved in getting that implemented. It's a great program, but and if any of my assumptions are wrong, please let me know. I would imagine because of deliveries, this lets us collect data on who may be most disconnected in terms of transportation to their nearest grocery store where they get fresh food. Is that information being shared with MCDOT so that could maybe inform their right-on research going on about what stops and routes are going to be changing?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer is I don't know. I would hope and assume that it is. And if there's someone else on here that knows better than me, please chime in. But we can certainly. I know the intention of all of these programs that we're using to try to support people are that we are capturing data and sharing it. Obviously, there's always some privacy concerns, but I don't think anything what you suggested would be one of them. Obviously, folks have to live here. They have to have a child that's in a program, a DHHS program that shows that they need support, and they can't be receiving SNAP again because this is to try to capture the folks that are in that gap. Again, with the connection to DOT, I'll have to check on that and get back to you, Michael. But it's a good point, and something that I think we can look into.
Thank you.
I'll just add that I think OFSR is going to be the Office of Food Systems Resilience. Sorry about the acronym. Will be speaking at our next food security community call, Michael. So, I know you're connected to them already, but they could probably share a little bit more information about their specific current data collection plan and where they're going to be collecting and sharing data. And I'm sure Councilmember Jawando can also obviously get back to you on that too. But just a heads up that, that they should be featured next month in October.
Yeah, and we were just super excited. I mean, that Instacart, we did the thing with Instacart last at Sprouts in Burtonsville. It's a big deal. I think we're the first in the country to do it, but you're right. We want to make sure we're finding out where the more insight we can have into the need and kind of overlaying and overlapping and layering services, the better. So it's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up.
Sorry, I just got a text from Catherine Nardi, who happens to be on the phone, and I guess this
We have an
demonstrates
answer.
how closely we work together. That they are collecting data from participants, including zip codes and purchasing patterns through Instacart. And I think she's happy to share more info directly with you, Michael, after the call. And Catherine, if you're able to come off mute, I welcome you too.
Michelle,
Hi,
this is
I don't know if you
Heather.
Okay.
Go ahead, Heather.
No, that's okay. You take it.
I didn't mean to cause
Yeah,
this much
we're
trouble.
all
I'm
coming
sorry.
back from the stream celebration at Crossroads, so I apologize. This is Heather Breskin with the OFSR team, and I just want to appreciate the question. And the initial data that we're receiving is from the pre-survey of MC Groceries participants, and so it underscores that many of our food insecure residents or families that are at risk for food insecurity are relying on public transportation to access their food. And so the initial survey data showed that 20% of MC Groceries, the primary way that they are previous to the program were getting their groceries is by taking the bus. And I think at least half of the program participants reflected in their pre-survey that they had to go to the grocery store multiple times due to the fact that they couldn't carry everything in one trip. And so I think that gets to a lot of those intersecting challenges like time and transportation barriers that are beyond the affordability from a financial perspective of food. So I think those are just some of the examples of the data that we're getting on the early phases, as well as what people are buying, and their grocery lists look just like mine in terms of meat and fresh fruits and vegetables are the top two things that are purchased through these programs in its first month. So, you know, I appreciate the suggestion about overlaying with DOT, and we'll be sure in our interagency collaboratives to be sharing the findings so that we can dig deeper to get at some of the root causes. So thanks for the question.
Thank
Thank you, Heather and Catherine, for your willingness to hop in there. As Michelle said in the chat, it still open for more questions. They are, like we said, any topic is welcome. So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to come off mute, drop them in the chat, whatever is easiest for you all.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I'll filibuster and just say, I need all these folks. I saw Pat Drummond said from that and yes, I'll come visit you at the distribution. I know that was direct to me, but I will come. But we do take care of our residents, but we're at an inflection point where the resources we have in the community we have, there's not enough to do what we need to do. And I really worry, you know, like I said, if I run for one more term, I can serve 6 years from today. I'm not going to be here forever. Maybe I'll do other things, but I really worry about us grappling with what is required to take care of our residents and to have everyone have opportunity to thrive. And I think food is a tip of the spear of that problem. And you know, the pandemic showed us what many of you already knew. We had deep food insecurity. It got worse. And, you know, the number I shared with you about our students in poverty, layer on that, we have more students in special education than we've ever had. You know, I have an autistic daughter. The autism rates used to be, you know, 1 in a few hundred. It's 1 in 40 now. It's so much higher. Students speaking English as a second language, right? All those kids can learn. We have great data on one-way immersion where, you know, you're getting to learn in your language and the kids are doing great. And, you know, but that stuff costs money. It's people, and it's investment, and we are very constrained in our budget right now. And so I think part of the solution has to be to advocate for you know, more resources. These are investments in people. Like when people are healthy, they're educated, that's more money into our economy as well. And I just think that we are at an inflection point where everyone wants to do the right thing and help people, but it's going to require us to do more. And there's only two ways to raise more revenue. You expand the tax base, which we want to do and should do, and bring businesses here and help people start new businesses. And then you have to look at rates. And I think we should be like what our president and vice president are talking about. Montgomery, Maryland had 1 in 10 Maryland are millionaires. It's higher than that in Montgomery County. Everyone pays 3.2% tax on income tax. If you make 30 million or 30,000, you pay 3.2% income tax in Montgomery County. It's a regressive, unfair system. If that number went from 3.2 to 3.7 just for millionaires, we would have almost $50 million more a year, 500 million over 10 years. We have to talk about revenues in order to do the work we want to do. Otherwise, it's just going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we're going to get more frustrated and more frustrated. So I just off my soapbox, but I just think it's an issue that it's tough to talk about, but we have to, because otherwise it's going to be really, really frustrating going forward. The hubs are another example of that, like funding the hubs. They've been doing great work, but we've had to give them less money.
I see several questions and several hands, so I'm going to go in the order that I saw them. So first, I'm going to go to Carla.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to ask Councilmember Jawando, are you all working with the state? Because I know that you said on the local level, the fundings are not there, but are you all collaborating on the state level with the governor so that they can pour more funding, like in maybe an account for the nonprofits, since we are the ones who are doing a lot of the feeding distributions and the programs that are getting out to the communities, because we know our communities?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Carla. I mean, the short answer is yes, but the funding situation at the state level is not great either. And as far as just the revenue situation, and last year the governor had to do some cuts in the middle of after the budget had passed on certain things. So they're kind of in a similar, if not worse, position of they're going to need to find ways to raise revenues too, to do things that they want to do. But the answer is yes. But we're not in a situation where there's this large surplus and we just need to get more money. Obviously, any of the money that the state gets, Montgomery County is the largest county and the wealthiest county. A lot of it comes from us. So it goes in and then we get some of it back. But arguably the formulas, I don't think we get enough in some sense, in some cases. But yes, we are talking to the state. They have the Office of Children, who, my former colleague, Carmel Martin, who runs that office, used to be the staff director for Ted Kennedy on the HELP committee, the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, when I worked for Obama, and Sherrod Brown on that committee. So I talked to her a lot. There is communication and connection. We just had Secretary Jake Day, the housing secretary, touring Montgomery County over the last 2 days. The council met with him, had lunch with him yesterday, a very healthy lunch, by the way. Everyone will be happy to hear. And so there is communication and connection. But there's not all the conversations that I've had are like, well, we're going to have to figure it out and tighten our buckles. And, it's not a largesse. It's not like there's a lot coming, is the way the conversations are going. Now we can continue to advocate, but I just want to be honest with you. That's kind of where things are.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Wendy next.
Thanks, Jack. Can you hear me? I've been having a little weird. Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you so much, Councilmember. And I just also raced back from Crossroads.
I saw you there.
Jimmy, I was on the phone for a little bit, but I wanted to just ask a sort of a question about, thank you so much for all that you've talked about. But what really jumped out for me, because this is what I've been studying, is the agricultural reserve and the ability to our need, I think, to make it work more for our region and for our county. And I'm curious if I could just tie together, it's an obvious connection to the food system. And we have people on this call who have, really, really great work in community gardens and school gardens, and all of it, I think, is part of the puzzle. But with 10 or 100,000, depending on who you talk to, acres up there, it has always seemed to me that that is a place we can't just say, okay, it's Colonial Williamsburg, let's move on. That we need to figure out how to make it more useful. And in particular, like how to make it more accessible to more people who can't afford these very expensive now large lots. And so I've been looking at like zoning and land use issues, and I'm really curious about the OLO report about the transferable development rights and the letters from the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice on some of the budget issues that had to do with easements. And I'm wondering if anything is happening, percolating, that we're just not seeing at the county council on these racial equity issues about access to use of the agricultural reserve land for more people.
Yeah, it's a great great set of points. That I did see that OLO report. The short answer is it's in receipt. I am not aware of any actions. There's been some initial conversations about it. One of the things I've always, one of my first bills I worked on when we came on the county council in 2019 was the racial equity law, and it's a great law. Requires racial equity analyses, but I always remind myself and my colleagues that it's only as good as the action we take on the racial equity analysis. And unfortunately, we've gotten into a pattern, as is human nature, to use it when it's something we think might be beneficial, but not talk about it when it's not. I think, because change is hard, right? Like our system, the reason our system is racially inequitable in so many ways is because the system was set up to benefit certain groups of people. And unless you're willing to change that system, that's the only way you can, make it more equitable. And that means people are going to have to get used to doing things differently or share, or, like all the things that, not have things happen the way they've happened for the last, 50 years or 60 years or more. And so I'm all that's on the table for me. I'm open to suggestions about how we would do it. I do think there are some unique programs that are happening, and Heather and others have focused this. We just had our racial equity office just did a session with AfroThrive, which I know many of you know. But it's on the margins, frankly, and it's not enough. And I think the profit of, who gets access to land, how much it costs, what is being grown or not grown, and who's getting those subsidies, all that stuff is important. So I would ask for your help and everyone, not just you specifically, but everybody, on thoughts of things I think I can help push, as a member of the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, as one of the leaders on equity on the council, to help make this better. I don't know all the answers, but I do know it's an issue, and it is something worthwhile addressing. So I see Michelle has her hand up, so maybe she has the answer for me.
Yeah, I'll just jump in really quickly and say I'm more than happy to talk further about any of these issues. It's been a project of my going back to school, going to Maryland Planning Department, Master's in Community Planning, moved to the PhD program. And I think these are really important issues for Montgomery County and all the areas. I mean, Maryland, we have a lot of agricultural areas that are trying to figure out the growth. And anyway, I can.
So yeah, we'll do a follow-up.
Follow up, I'm happy to.
Would love to, Wendy. So we'll make sure we do that. I don't want to get involved in who's next, Jack. So you pick.
Yeah, I got it. I'm gonna go to our chat, and then I'm gonna go to Lucia, because I think that's the order I saw it. And I'm gonna tie together the two questions in the chat though, because I think they do actually fit together quite nicely. Susan and Anishal's question. So Susan had put in that, what legislative and programmatic support can we provide to make our county food system more resilient and helping to increase local food production, such as supporting farmers and increasing table crops, farming on the agriculture reserve, which obviously you just touched on, and then things like school farms and the reach. And then Anishal also had a question about supporting community gardens. So I thought those tied together neatly. Yes.
And I see you put some good examples of some community gardens in there. Thank you for that. Yeah, I am a huge fan of community gardens. I'll start with that. And I think, again, enabling more of those, is always something we want to be doing. I'm cognizant of, like, some schools are in better position than others to do it, and the time and the strains on our, on our educators just in general. We've asked them to do quite a bit and reduce their and didn't give them what they asked for last year in the budget. So where they had to reduce staff and increase class size. So just want to be, honest about that. But I do think these are great programs. It's, I was talking to my daughter this morning on the way to school, and everyone who's a parent or who has been a kid, so that's everyone on this call. I was having the age-old conversation of, like, I don't want to go to school. It's boring. And she said, well, I would like to go if, like, my teachers made the classes interesting and connected it to things I cared about, right? And I said, and I'm sure every educator would hope that that's what they do, but I do think agricultural production, community gardening, the program I talked about with our ag system of bringing the truck and, kind of teaching people how food is, where it comes from, all those things are ways to get people more engaged. A lot of times some of that happens in science. We're also facing a crisis where science is, like, jammed into 40 minutes now because of the important focus on literacy and math. But I think we've got to figure out ways to, really get our kids interested in things that are exciting while still supporting literacy and math. So that's what I'd say on that. And the other question was related to, give me the other part again, Jack.
Yeah, let me just scroll back up, make sure I read it correctly. What kind of legislative and programmatic support can be provided to make our food system more resilient, such as supporting farmers, the incubator space, school farms, like you just touched on, and then our hubs as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done a lot, like I talked about, and you got the all-star folks on here with Heather and Michelle and all the relative teams and some of the providers here. There's a whole plan around that, right? Like, that we're trying to tick through and fund and then make the policy change around food resiliency. So I really defer to our experts on that, like, because there's always a million things you could be doing. What are the highest leverage? What is the order? And again, there's not one right answer here, but, like, how do we prioritize and focus our efforts? I think that's something we're always trying to think about as policymakers, both with funding and policy. So I'm not punting on that, but maybe I'd ask, if someone tells me there's a law that we should be doing tomorrow that would help make things better, I would pursue it. But I think that was the impetus behind us being supportive of the Food System Resilience Office and obviously the Food Council and then the hub effort. All of those are, like, I think, high leverage ways to help organize, fund, and support all these different strategies.
I am gonna turn it over to Lucia for our last question, because I want to make sure we leave a few minutes for community updates as well. So, Lucia?
And I'll be very concise.
No, you're fine.
Thank you, Jack. So Councilmember Jawando, I appreciate your time. And I wanted to hone specifically to the school gardens, right? I'm a strong proponent for school gardens and incorporating elements into math and literacy curriculum, like, for example, the areas of those raised beds, etc. So this not only helps children and families develop a healthy relationship with food, but can also help provide additional food sources to the school community themselves, right? As an immigrant myself from Peru, I have seen how detached we have grown from food production. Mm-hmm. And one of my, thinking of my American Heart Association hat, I have been strongly involved in empowering children and families in developing that relationship with food. And what we see a lot is the lack of exposure to fresh produce from the end of the children. So if the children grow in an environment where they're constantly touching, trying things in their school, we have a higher chance of those children not having less diet-related diseases. Now, with my American Heart Association hat, we're seeing a lot of younger individuals with chronic related diseases such as hypertension and diabetes. So which kind of hones a little bit more on the point of empowering children who are going to become these young adults with hypertension. What would you say is your vision to empower children in MCPS or in our county to contribute and empower to be part of this food system?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of that I worked on earlier in my career was with Michelle Obama on Let's Move initiative, and you know, they fought her really hard on the one of the policy outgrowths of that, which was to, you know, to change the standards for food in schools, and the child nutrition bill, and I worked on that. And unfortunately, some of it was rolled back, you know, things that said like, you know, ketchup was a tomato, you know, was a vegetable, and all those crazy things. And so I am proud of like our food system, as far as MCPS, with they try to provide, you know, healthy options, and have really led on that on their own. You know, we still have a lot of work to do, right? You know, as far as getting kids both interested in and eating healthier options, and kind of, you know, the combination of tricking them, but then also connecting them to the food sources, like you said. And I do think that that is a huge issue, where, you know, most kids, as you have very eloquently described, do not know where food comes from, don't understand the path from it, and and many have an aversion to fresh fruits and vegetables because of marketing and social media, and you know, just what's in their vending machines and the like. So we have a lot of work to do of like what's on a couple fronts, what's available to them, like, so what are we actually putting in front of them to eat? I think we've made some progress there. We can always do more. Two, connecting more of our, I mentioned that one program where the ag reserve, you know, some of the farmers come down and do stuff at schools, but it's barely funded. It hits a handful of schools a year. You know, we should be doing more there. I know I've seen it when it comes through. The kids really love it. And then to your point, you know, how are we being innovative? This is something I would turn back on you guys. Like, what are best practices around the country on this that we could be doing? You know, like, I think we're in a school system and in a county where if you have something that's innovative, that's been proven to work to address this, you know, nationwide, you know, if not global problem, we'll try it. I agree with you. Like, it's a struggle with my kids. You know, our oldest is 14, our youngest is 5. Like, you know, it's like, I'm always trying to figure out how can I get them to eat fruits and vegetables, right? You know, so like that, some they like, some they hate. But like on a systems level, if you have thoughts, since you've researched this, or if you have other things that you think are working, share them with the Food Council, share them with me. You know, one of the things I'm thinking as we've had this call is we need to have a committee session in the E&C committee, and probably with HHS as well, a joint committee on our, you know, we will do it on the childhood hunger plan, but I think specifically on, you know, what is happening around food in our schools, around the food system in our schools, and like kind of really do a deep dive into it and see where the gaps are. I would love to, so at the appropriate time, I'd love to do that, maybe work with you guys to do that as well.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Jawando, for your time. Thank you to everyone for such amazing questions. We really appreciate it. I do know we are getting close to time here, so I wanted to open up the floor to see if anyone had any community updates.
Sorry.
Oh, yep.
Sorry, Jack. I have
Nope.
one more question.
Yeah.
This one's actually from Jackie DiCarlo, council member. She just sent it over to me because she's on her way back from Crossroads as well. But she was wondering if council is willing to support funding nonprofits to use cash equivalents, such as vouchers and gift cards, to get money into pockets similar to SNAP.
Cash equivalents, such as?
Vouchers or gift cards instead of just food purchases.
So what would we need to, so explain that to me. How would that work?
my interpretation of her question that was via text is that would council be willing to fund not just the purchase of food for distribution, but
The purchase of the cards.
yeah, cards or other, vouchers or gift cards.
I mean,
cash
this
equivalents.
council member would be willing to do it. I think I don't think there's a prohibition to it. It would just need to be, we just need to fund it. But again, I think the issue is having enough funding to do all the things we want to do. But yes, I mean, I think it's a great question. I'm all about, like, look, you're talking to the guy who pushed out the guaranteed income where you just gave people money to buy anything because we know when you give people choice, people who need it, they're going to spend it on things they need. And the less we micromanage that, the better. So yes, I mean, but I think it's just a matter of taking that in the context of the whole budget, but would love to follow up with you and Jackie. And I know she won't be shy on following up on that. So
You're right about that. And Lucia, just to point out, the Food Council is actually working with MCPS on a farm to school action plan. So a lot of what you're talking about, we're trying to work on with them, both on their food nutrition services side as well as their facilities side. So hopefully we'll be coming up with some key opportunities that we can all pursue together in the future. And sounds like a great opportunity for county council to have a hearing to learn more about that plan when it's released.
that would be great. You know the timeline on that?
The plan is due to the USDA at the end of 2024. And currently the Food Council has funding, so we're required to deliver the plan to USDA, but MCPS had to be a committed partner and they plan to make it their plan. So they want to own the plan as their current process. So
yeah,
we're really thrilled.
That's awesome. Yeah. And they have some good options like that are healthy, like that they have there. It's just got to keep going. So that's good to hear. I'm excited about that. Yeah, so we'll definitely do something on that once that plan is ready.
Thank you. Back to you, Jack. Sorry to cut in.
No worries. And I know we only have a minute left. And Michael, I saw that you sent me a message that but I just wanted to give you the floor for 30 seconds. If there's anything you wanted to with an update, and you are more than welcome to send me over anything and I can make sure it gets into the follow-up information. And that goes to anyone as well. If there's anything that you would like to be shared with the community, please feel free to email me directly and I will make sure it goes in our follow-up information.
Jack, yeah, just very briefly, I know you sent in your emails that the county has the attainable housing listening sessions going on. So there's a virtual session October 2nd. So anyone who wants to speak on attainable housing, I hope they would go. I put the link to the RSVP link in the chat. And if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I'm a steering committee member of Montgomery for All. Very briefly, I'm for it. I'm not going to bombard the chat with my propaganda. So if anyone wants to talk to me directly, I'll put my email in the chat and I'll be more than happy to talk about attainable housing with you one-on-one. And that's all I'm going to say, Council. And thank you for your time, Council member. Sorry for so much time at the beginning with question number 1. It's only fair that I get a bunch of questions too, so I'm not a hypocrite.
No, it was a great question. And I'll actually be at the Attainable Housing Town Hall tonight in Bethesda.
So will I.
If anyone wants to join us there.
Awesome. We are right at 2 o'clock here now, so I'm going to stop our recording, which I apologize for.